Stanley was a very, he was a very intense guy. A lot of people, there's a stigma about Stanley that he was kind of nutty and stuff. He wasn't at all. He was just he was probably would remind you of most artists that you know here in Woodstock. He was of the same ilk. He was quite a guy, very intense guy, very smart guy, and a photographer by nature. I mean, he was innately a photographer. You saw everything in frames, in 35mm frame, not even film. That's the way you could see when you walked in his office, because he never talked about story when he was directing. He never talked about acting. He never talked about anything. The only thing that he saw was his shot. It wasn't even a moving shot. It was just a shot. And because you could walk into his office and you could see his photographs or other people's photographs, and you could start to see the tone. I mean, nowadays when you walk into a production office and there's a director, you see visuals of all kinds that are pulled off the internet and drawings and all these detailed CGI things that they're doing and stuff. I remember Stanley's production room was similar to that, except it wasn't that extensive. It was just simple frames of 35mm shots. And you could see the whole movie in those frames without having to ask him one question. I just thought of another thing that I remember going on set for the first time and meeting him. They were shooting all the Vietnam stuff first. And
it's hard to say. I couldn't tell where it was shot.
It was shot in England, in a place called Becton, which was an old gasworks plant. And they flew in palm trees and sand from Spain and blew the gasworks up with demolition. First they painted it all to look like the city of Wayne, and then they blew it up and brought in these. It was my first time on a big film, and there were palm trees in dumpsters like planters. It was amazing. It was amazing to see as a young man. And I remember walking on the set for the first time, and they were shooting. There's a sniper sequence at the end of the film, and they were shooting that part of the film first. And I remember seeing Stanley in the distance, and I asked, because I never met him face to face, I asked if I could go over and talk to him. And at that time I thought...
You hadn't met him yet?
No, only on the phone. Back, it was my first film set, so I thought I had to ask permission to do things, And so I did, and they walked me over, and I remember passing this van. It was a Volkswagen bus van, a British version of it, and all these people were sitting in it, in suits. And I'm kind of like looking at it. It was very odd because they're in the city of Way. They're like in this Volkswagen bus with suits on. And I walked by them, and then Stanley's in the distance, and Stanley's sitting there with Terry Needham, who was one of the most incredible first ADs in the business ever. And I walked over, so he saw me, and he got up, and he shook my hand, and he told me to sit down. And I sat down next to him, and he was watching his shot on a little box. And, we sat for about 45 minutes, and nothing happened. Nobody spoke, nobody did anything. And then I felt, compelled to say something. So I leaned over to Stanley, and I said, "So who are those people in the bus?" And he said, "Those are the Warner Brother executives. They're not allowed to get out." It's a true story.
So, what kind of changes did you go through playing that role?
I think I became a film actor doing that. I think that there were people getting fired around me. I think I had some very good teachers when I was young, some very hardcore teachers that came from Actor Studio, and Sonia Moore from the American Stanislavski Theater, who was actually a student of Stanislavski's. I was shocked at how unprepared the actors were that were there. I mean, not Matthew and not Arliss, but there was anybody below that tier. I didn't understand why they were there. I was very naive. I mean, today I don't feel that way. But at the time, I thought, how did you get here? Like, how did you get the job?
Stanley Kubrick called them too.
How do you get a job if you don't know how to act? It's odd. I felt it was very strange. But the truth is that they didn't last. That he saw in them their laziness and their inability and sent them home.
I mean, it was notorious how many people didn't make it through the end of that movie.
Yeah. And the thing that I learned the most is that it's not a joke, you do have to know what you're doing. That you can't just slide by in a circumstance like that. Not with somebody like that. Not when there's other actors there like Arliss and Matthew, who are amazing actors. And you can't just slide by that. You have to know what you're doing. And that if you don't, you will get fired. And they will fire you and they won't think twice about it. And I remember showing up on set every day being...
and carrying those extra 80 pounds with you.
And being completely confident in what I was doing, even as a young man, because I knew that I had been taught to be legitimate. So I guess in the end, what I learned is that, that what I do for a living is not a joke, and that the fact that I was taught correctly paid off. And, I recognized right away that Stanley didn't want to talk about story, and he didn't want to talk about character, and that he did his job in casting it. And if he made a mistake, he got rid of that mistake and replaced it with something better.